Arthur had once been one of America's top cognitive psychologists. He spent 40 years studying how habits form, why humans run from discipline, and how the brain can be rewired without stress or force. He also served in the U.S. military in his youth, where discipline was survival, not choice. After retirement, instead of writing books or giving TV interviews, he chose silence. He lived in the small town of Gravestone Ridge, a peaceful countryside far from cities, social media, and noise. His house sat near a lake, surrounded by pine trees and morning fog. No one knew his past achievements. People just called him the wise old man by the lake. But wisdom does not stay hidden forever. Mr. Arthur Blackwood was 78 years old, but his mind was sharper than most 20-year-olds. His snow-white hair, slow walk, and vintage round glasses made him look like an ordinary old man, but behind those calm eyes lived a brain trained in psychology, human behavior, and self-mastery. A town full of undisciplined men. In Gravestone Ridge, the biggest problem was not poverty, but lack of self-control. The young generation, especially men, was addicted to comfort. They wanted success, but hated routines. They wanted strong bodies, but avoided gyms. They wanted money, but feared work. They scrolled phones for 6 hours, but studied for 6 minutes. The town had talent, but no discipline to sharpen it. A group of 6 young men met every evening at a local cafe, complaining about life while sipping cheap coffee. Jake, 24. I start strong for 2 days, then I quit. Ethan, 27. My brain loves comfort too much. Lucas, 23. I know what to do, but I never do it. Noah, 25. Motivation dies. Discipline feels like torture. Mark, 26. I want to trick my brain, but how? Sam, 22. Maybe discipline just isn't for us. Arthur, sitting quietly in the corner reading an old neuroscience journal, overheard them. He closed his book slowly, adjusted his glasses, and stood up. The men stopped talking when they saw him walking toward them. Arthur's voice was calm, slow, and heavy with confidence. Discipline is not your enemy. Your brain just hasn't been introduced to it correctly. They exchanged confused looks. Jake, sir, are you a life coach or something? Arthur smiled gently. No, son. I'm someone who understands the battlefield inside your skull. That night, they didn't know it, but their lives were about to change. The first lesson begins at the lake. Arthur invited them to meet him the next morning at 5:30 a.m. by the lake. Only 3 showed up. The rest overslept. Arthur didn't look disappointed. The first trick to discipline, he said, is making your brain believe it is part of who you are, not something you are forcing it to do. He explained how the brain protects energy and fears discomfort, but can be manipulated using psychological framing. If you say, I have to wake up early, your brain rebels. If you say, I am the type of man who wakes up early, your brain accepts it as identity. The 3 men listened like soldiers receiving a secret weapon. He continued, discipline must feel like your choice, not punishment. He handed each of them a small notebook. Write this sentence 10 times every morning. I am a disciplined man. I finish what I start. Your brain will eventually defend it like truth. The men nodded. Discipline circle is born. That evening, all 6 men came to Arthur's house. They begged him to continue teaching. Arthur agreed on one condition. I will teach you, but you will also teach others. Discipline grows in circles, not isolation. They formed the discipline circle. 1 lesson per week, each lesson revealing a psychological trick. Word spread fast in the town. There's an old genius teaching men how to hack their brain. But Arthur didn't want fame. He wanted transformation. Arthur's philosophy. He never shouted, never forced, never motivated emotionally. He taught like a surgeon, precise, scientific, and effective. He believed men fail discipline because they fight their brain directly. Real discipline is brain negotiation. Once the brain enjoys the process, discipline becomes addiction, the first transformation. Within 14 days, the 3 men who followed his notebook rules stopped struggling to wake up early. Their brains stopped resisting. Something shifted. Ethan, it feels like my brain expects discipline now. Lucas, it's weird. It almost feels good. Jake, not good, powerful. Arthur nodded. Your brain doesn't like discipline. It likes the version of you that discipline creates. Once it sees the benefit, it starts cooperating. The remaining three begged for a faster trick. Arthur smiled again, stood up, and said, "Then it's time for lesson 2, the 2-minute rule." And the circle leaned forward, hungry like wolves ready to evolve into lions. The next morning, the sun had barely stretched its light across the lake when all 6 men arrived this time. The air was cold, sharp, and smelled like wet wood and ambition. Arthur was already sitting on an old folding chair, waiting, not surprised, not emotional, just observant. He didn't greet them with praise for showing up early. Instead, he opened their minds like a codebreaker unlocking a safe. "You all think discipline is a personality trait," Arthur began. "It's not. It's a trained neurological response, and training begins small enough that the brain doesn't detect the threat." The men sat on wooden logs around him. No phones, no coffee, no distractions. Silence wrapped around the group like a ritual. Arthur lifted his cane, not to lean on it, but to point with it, like a general pointing at a battlefield map. "Lesson 2, he declared softly but firmly, is the 2-minute rule, the rule that ends the war between knowing and doing. Discipline must be smaller than resistance." Arthur explained that every time a man wants to start something difficult, workout, study, business, waking up early, the brain releases a signal of avoidance before logic even speaks. He called it resistance alarm. "Your brain is not lazy," Arthur corrected. "It is protective. It thinks discipline is danger because discipline spends energy, and your brain loves energy more than it loves your dreams." Sam, 22, frowned. "So we're built to fail?" Arthur shook his head gently. "No, you're built to avoid sudden energy loss, but you can bypass the alarm if the task is tiny enough." He continued, "When you commit to a big routine, your brain screams. But when you commit to just 2 minutes, your brain whispers, that's acceptable. And once you start, momentum finishes the job." Arthur gives the challenge. Arthur stood up slowly and pointed toward the lake. "Tomorrow, each of you will start a discipline you've been avoiding, but you won't do the full routine. You'll only do it for 2 minutes, not more, just 2. The men looked confused again. Mark, 26, "Only 2 minutes? That won't change anything." Arthur smiled with a veteran calmness. "It won't change your life, but it will change your brain's relationship with starting." The experiments begin. The next day, each man tested the 2-minute rule in his own life. Arthur didn't monitor them. He trusted the process more than pressure. Jake, the gym avoider. Jake wanted to build muscle for years. Every January, he bought a gym membership. Every February, he stopped going. This time, he entered the gym and whispered to himself, "Just 2 minutes, that's it." He did. 1-minute treadmill walk, 1-minute push-ups. At 2 minutes, he stopped. His brain didn't panic. No stress, no inner drama. But something strange happened. When he reached the door to leave, his brain said, "Since we're already here, maybe 5 more minutes?" Jake froze. "This is the trick," he whispered to himself. "It wants more because I already started." He turned back and trained for 45 minutes, not because he forced discipline, but because he tricked the brain into opening the door. Arthur shares his own life story inside the story. Arthur then told them a personal flashback from his youth. When he was 17, poor, fatherless, working in a mechanic shop, waking up early felt impossible. Studying felt impossible. Success felt like a word for rich people. One night he sat on the roof of his broken house and said, "I want to become someone important, but my brain loves comfort too much." He invented his first brain trick there, the identity rewrite trick. He said to himself 50 times, "I am a disciplined man, even if I don't feel like one yet." He did it every night for 6 months. His brain slowly stopped questioning it. Identity became default. Then he created the second trick, tiny start ritual. Every time he didn't want to study, he would just say, "Open the book for 10 seconds." He didn't commit to studying, only opening. 10 seconds became 10 minutes. 10 minutes became 2 hours. 2 hours became 5 years of mastery. That poor mechanic boy became Dr. Arthur Blackwood, the man who now sat in silence teaching others. The circle is now addicted to starting. After hearing Arthur's youth story, the men realized discipline was not heroic force, but psychological engineering. Their brains now expected early wake-ups, tiny start rituals, dopamine reward after completion, identity-based discipline. The town didn't know it, but a silent revolution was spreading.